Hello, Grid Investor Network. It is great to be here again this week. I'm really excited to be chatting with my dear friend and colleague, Raj Tamang, and I'm Danielle Palloschi-Browne, and we're here for our weekly builder and construction series where we're going over step-by-step how to literally construct a house. So this week, like we kind of mentioned last week we started talking about squeaky floors, foundations, issues with products and things like that. Mm-hmm. And we ended up completely diving away from this topic, so we're going to hit it this week. We're talking about insulation. What are the requirements? What's good insulation? What do you need to look out for? So let's dive into it. So Raj, What do I need to know about insulation other than it keeps my house, or tries to help keep my house at a more static temperature, hopefully around that 70 to 75-ish degree mark? That's personally for me, but somebody likes it. Some other people like it differently. So what should we know about insulation? Where do we start?
Yeah, that's the ideal, right? 70, 75. If you can have that temperature all the time, that's more ideal our human body to feel comfortable. So insulation is one of the very important part of your building construction, because your energy saving, right? Your bills coming from gas or electricity, it depends what type of heating cooling system you have. Typically in our area, DMV area, we have, if there's a gas, natural gas or propane, we use a heating system, which is furnace, right? Gas furnace. And cooling system is electric. Typically, any type of house in our area, we have usually 3-story, including a basement. So you have a basement, first floor, and second floor. Anytime you have a 3-story building, it could be townhouse. You typically see 2 joining. Okay, one would be in the basement. That's typically gas, heat furnace, gas furnace. That will feed the basement and first floor. And you will have a 1 unit in the attic that will fit the second floor. So if you have, let's say, 1 unit, even the townhouse, nowadays I see 3-story townhouse, you have 2 units, because if you have a 1 unit in the basement, it's not effective, efficient way of trying to heat or cool down all 3 floors using one system.
Got it.
So nowadays you see, even the townhouse, you will see 3-story townhouse, it's 2 systems, one in the attic, one in the basement. Okay. So the purpose is, in the winter time, we have to heat the building, right? Heat the house inside. In the summertime, we have to cool. So the purpose of insulation is, when you're running heating or cooling system, you should have less energy loss from the exterior wall, usually exterior envelope. That's what we call it. So exterior of the house, which is exterior walls, then you have a roof, right? That's where you're trying to seal the exterior envelope using insulation. So if you have a better insulation, you can definitely save your energy bills in heating and cooling. Jenna, I just built my own house in Fairfax, close to my office. And this is funny. This is about 6,500 square feet home. My energy bills are less than townhouse. Okay. So very excited, because I did few upgrades, and in the long term I think it pays off. So some of the things I did is your HVAC equipment I upgraded. Usually 90% efficiency that's what most of the builder use. But I use 95, right? Which is more, but again, it's better efficiency. Then insulation outside, typically by code, and most of the builder, they go with the minimum code requirements with the new construction, which is usually R15 or R19. R15 is the one I think minimum required for the exterior wall envelope for insulations. But we do R19 at least, because in a 2x6 wall, with the 2x6 exterior wall, I can do R19 easily. But if it's 2x4, I won't be able to do R19 with a regular back insulation, fiberglass. Okay, so
is the R19? What does the 19 stand for? So is that like more densely insulated or less densely insulated? Like how does that measure?
To be honest with you, I really don't know the number, but the higher number it is, it's better insulation. Okay.
Okay.
So
okay.
you start with, so you start with R9, R11, R13, R15, 19, 21. So 2x6 construction, I can even do R21 because if you do regular insulation, bad fiberglass insulation, you have to put those insulation between the studs. Mm-hmm. Right? So if it's 2x4, there's so much you could do because the thickness of the wall is only 2x4, right?
Yes.
So if you want to do more insulation, then you probably have to do foam board and stuff like the additional board you have to attach to the house from outside, get additional insulation. That's why, all new construction we do, it's a 2x6, means that mm-hmm. you have a more thicker wall, means you can have better insulations. I can do R21 easily with a better insulations going from R21 to 19 to R21. You are not spending a lot of money, but I think in the overall long term, you're saving money, not paying mm-hmm. for the bills.
Sure.
So that's usually by code nowadays is R15 to R19 is what is required depending which jurisdiction you are working. So that gives you the thickness of the wall and put the insulations. Then you have to think about put the insulation on the attic, right, roof. Mm-hmm. Okay. If it is a regular roof process, which is a very common method of construction, roof framing, we do attic insulation which is blown in, right? It's like, it looks like some kind of smaller pieces.
Yeah, they're like little chunks of.
Chunky, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, like somewhere between marshmallow, cotton candy, and like a ripped apart.
Yeah, cotton candy, but to be honest with you, even thinking about it, it just makes my body itchy, to be honest.
Yeah.
So yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's most cost-effective method of doing insulation on the attic. We call blown-in insulations. Then there's some insulation you in the basement. For example, you have a basement wall, concrete, usually concrete. New construction is pretty much basement wall. Is concrete construction, but old you'll see block, right? Cinder block with 8-inch block, 10-inch block, 12-inch block wall. But nowadays it's easy. The reason is concrete. You see, it's easy because you just make the formwork for the wall and pour the concrete done in one day. Everything is done. The block wall it may take several days and people, right? So it's more costly in my mind because labor intensive. So if you have a concrete wall, because of the thickness of the wall, and you have to remember the concrete wall, it will give you a little bit of insulation value because it has some thickness.
Yeah.
But especially if it's a buried basement, means behind the concrete wall there's a dirt. Most likely it's cold or in winter time. So just the thickness of the concrete wall would not give you the enough insulation. Okay, it will give you a little bit, but not enough. And also you have to remember concrete by itself is very porous. It's porous material. It's not. Yep. And there is some concrete you can have non-porous, means there is no voids, but usually concrete is porous. And it's called cracked concrete, uncracked concrete. That's more technical, but that means any concrete was supposed to crack means there's a void, right? If any moisture or water from outside, if you don't have a good waterproofing system, water may come inside the house. Now, so in the basement, we have to do insulation. So if it is finished basement, usually we have 2x4 flooring walls inside. Yep. Then you put R13. Okay, insulations, R13. But if you have unfinished basement, such as utility room, mechanical room.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do R13 because you don't have to put 2x4. So we have a foil. You can buy like a blanket,
Got it.
The foil,
so it's not living space, where it's not like a living room, a bedroom. So if it's more of a utility room or unfinished, you don't have to meet the same insulation requirements.
Correct. If it's unfinished basement, if it's unfinished basement, then you don't have a 2x4 flooring wall. Means you don't have regular insulations. So, but you still have to do insulation because you have to remember, even if your basement is unfinished, and if the basement is not properly insulated, the energy loss can happen through the basement, right?
Sure.
So,
absolutely.
but it just basically you have to do foil, insulation is a lot cheaper. So that's what we usually do. Another common method is foam insulation. So
I was going to ask, like, do you recommend different insulation products for different areas of the house, or are you saying like carte blanche, one is better than the other? In terms of like, well, I guess obviously they all cost different things.
Yes.
And they all can do different levels of insulating. But what would you say in a basement? Like, would foam insulation be best in a basement, or what other products would you use? Because you're not going to use blow in, right? It's more like the sheets or the rolled out. I'm not describing this well, but it looks like a piece of sod, but it's a piece of insulation that you kind of like staple to the wall, right?
That's called fiberglass, bad insulation. So that goes between the studs.
Yes.
So the studs are usually spaced 16 inches one center. You can find those rolls, even different height, like already pre-cut 8 foot, 9 foot, 10 foot, and you just shove it in between the studs.
Yep.
That's the more easy installation. Yes, foam insulation is definitely better, but it's more expensive. So in price comparison in our area, it's almost double the cost, right?
Yeah.
But again, you can get the same insulation value with a less thicker foam insulation. So let's say you are getting R21 with the batt insulations with 6.5 or 5.5 inch, or which is 2x6. You may get the same insulation with only 2 inch or 3 inch thick. The foam. But again, that's more expensive. So it's not typical. Sometimes people on high-end homes, where we do a lot of high-end homes in McLean, Falls, Vienna area. Some of the customers, they want it. They want to pay the premium for it.
Sure.
Definitely you get a value because it's definitely more energy efficient. You can think about this, and the purpose of this insulation, like I mentioned before, is trying to create this envelope around the house. There is a less leakage, right? Less energy loss through the gaps and holes. So if you put a foam, of course, any smaller tiny holes, you could just fill it with the foam.
Yeah, it's about as covering as you can get, like, because it's really just it's almost sealing everything. Completely, rather than stuffing it like a nest. It really creates a much better seal. But yeah, for a product like that, it definitely costs a little bit more money, which makes total sense.
Exactly.
So then how do you usually handle like maybe some budgetary restrictions? Like, if a client was like, hey, this is really important to me to be energy efficient, but like we can't afford to do foam for the whole house, would you recommend doing a couple of different types, or is that just not something you did? So like, would you be able to do foam in the basement because it's a basement, right? Known for being kind of cold, kind of damp, it's a basement. And then maybe like fiberglass, in the rest of the house and the rest of the walls, and then maybe like blow in an attic? Or is that just kind of like weird to combine 3 different types of insulation in different places?
No, that's a very good question, Danielle, because people do combinations of several, which we do it too. But one thing I can tell you, okay, the basement is cold. It's not necessarily because basement is big basement. This is how it works. This is the physics. So you have to remember air. If it is hot, it's lighter, right? If it's hot, if the air is hot, means it's lighter, so it's gonna try to go up. If it's a cold, means that colder temperature, it has more weight technically and try to go down. So in the winter time, give you an example, you are heating the house, right? But it's not a 1-story building, it's a 3-story building. Think about this, the air can openly flow from basement to the top floor. So you are heating the building, but when the house starts heating, the air start getting hotter, right? What happened? The air start going up to the top floor. It's gonna go up naturally by itself to the top floor. So in the winter time, all of a sudden your top floor is so hot. Okay, your basement is cold. It's not necessarily because of basement, because all those cold air is still sitting on the basement.
Yeah.
But that's why you feel like in the winter time it looks like basement is not really working out. That's why you have to have a 2-joint system so that you have one joint completely running first floor and the basement is more effective. And you have a one for the top floor. But you have to remember it's because, like I said, the air is such that when it's lighter, it tends to go to the top floor, and then it replaces the cold air and goes down to the basement. You know what I'm saying? So then the basement, technically, you don't have to do better insulation than the upper floor. You don't. You don't. It's
equal insulation is going to be equal.
Yeah, it is. It is. Like I said, you have to remember, basement is below, so you don't have a cold air flowing. If it has a really cold air blowing, you really don't feel in the basement because it's a buried basement, below.
Yeah.
But upper floors, first floor and second floor, and there's a very cold wind, probably you feel that, right? Feel that. That's why actually, it's a thermal system work. Is that nowadays there's so many advanced technology they use. They use this natural system of earth. So what that means is that even in winter time, you dig a hole on the ground. So maybe first 1 foot, 2 foot is cold. Then as you go deeper, you start feeling warmer.
Yeah.
So
below the frost line.
Yeah, after the fall. So in the winter time, you feel really cold, but as you go down deeper, so that's why the geothermal system they work, because they have this system, they install it all the way down in the ground, where the temperature is almost the same. Doesn't matter winter or summer. So now you have to think about it. If it's a winter, it's really cold air, means it takes more energy to hit the air, right? But if you have a similar, it's the same type of air coming, and it's less. So that's why. Yeah.
So what does the installation of a geothermal system look like? Because I saw a house. I toured a house with a client 3 or 4 months ago, and it had a geothermal system. We were trying to figure out where in the yard it was because it's buried, obviously. And they were like, how much more effective is it? I'm like, I got to be real with you. I don't run along these very frequently as a real estate agent, but they sound really cool. I think the system sounds like it's more expensive to set up, but I don't know. So what are your thoughts on a geothermal system?
I have seen it many, but I have not installed myself. But it's just a heating cooling system. They are using this natural system of nature. Like I said, in the winter time, if you have this heating cooling system on outside or above ground, so it means it takes more energy to cool. But then if you have a system underground all the way down, the temperature is almost the same, almost a balance, not that cold. Yeah. Now you are using less energy to make that air to make it hotter, right?
Yep.
So that's the system they use. But I really don't know how the design work, but that's the basic concept, is that we know that when you go deeper, there's a pretty much a stable air temperature, so it takes less energy to hit that air versus is really cold air outside, which could be freezing in the wintertime, depends where you are.
Yeah.
But insulation system is about the same. Typically, the way we do cost-effective way, first of all, you have to remember when you build a house, you have to meet a minimum energy code requirement by all this, design code requirements, county health requirements. So that's the minimum you have to do. But if you want to do better, of course you can do it. It's more expensive. So the rule of thumb usually we do is that back insulation, R19, R21 exterior walls on the ceiling with the trusses. We use blown-in insulation, right? R39 or R38, R49. That's what you goes, because in the attic you need it more. Okay, because you have to remember attic is cold. If you do trusses, you put this insulations on the floor, but that area on the attic there's no heating cooling system. Also, that's why we have venting system. That's why we have to use a ventilation system, which is, I think we can talk about that later on the exterior framing part. But that's why you have this vent, roof vent, ridge vent, and you have a vent on the soffit, you know, so that there is a flow, airflow from the soffit goes inside the roof, and from the raised vent it's coming out. There's circulations. It's not a stagnation of the air inside the trusses or the attic. So that we will talk about that different.
Build up, right?
Correct. You don't want that. Yeah. But otherwise, that's why in the winter or summertime, your attic could be freaking hot, right?
Yeah.
It's really hot. So if you don't have a proper ventilation system, even people install the fans, right? You know, you can actually buy these solar fans, attic fans. You can install it. But if you have your proper ventilation system, like I say, raised vent, then you also have a vent soffit properly done. You don't have to worry about that much. So new construction pretty much are good, but old construction where you see, you know, if you don't have a good ventilation system, then you can install those solar, you know, fans, attic fans, and also sometimes you will see on the attic the smaller windows on the gables on the end. Yeah. That's a ventilation purpose also because they don't have a raised vent. You know, so there's different way of doing it. But like I said, exterior wall you do regular, you know, battery insulation fiberglass. And one thing I do is you have to remember the joist, where the joists are. First floor, second floor, you have a joist. Yeah. It's got a joist end or ribbons. It's called a joist band. So there, it's difficult to put those regular battery insulation. People do it, builders do it to save money. But that is the area you might have gaps and holes. You can't properly seal using those regular insulation material. That's where me 100% always, when I build new house, at least on the joist board, I use foam. Got it. It's not gonna cost, maybe cost a couple $100 more, but it's not really that expensive. But I think it's more, you know, to me, it's no brainer just to use at least in the joist bands, the foam insulation. Got it. Okay. So, well, because if you cut the pad, like the rollout pad insulation, the fiberglass, then you're breaking some seals right there. You're creating gaps where there wasn't any gaps. Correct. Yeah, because you have to remember those rolls you put between the studs. Yeah. Right. It goes between the stud spacing, but where the floor between the one floor and another floor, there is no stud. There is a joist. There's between the joist. There's a void. Then you know those are the area you just can infill with a foam, and that's I think it's not going to cost you a lot of money, but I think it's worth it. Another thing also we do any builder that you have, and you have to do it before a framing inspection. That's part of county requirements. Is called air seal. Okay. What that means is that you have to remember all the framing is done. Between the framing, you do insulations, but still there could be gaps between the framing or maybe headers. You know what I'm saying? All those gaps and holes, especially electrician, they're gonna make a hole through the plates and things like that. You can't really completely seal. So those areas we do a seal. Okay, almost like caulking. Oh, okay. Almost like foam. Yeah, it's kind of foam. But that can completely seal those gaps. So all those gaps, all the holes, completely seal it. Then between the joist, between the stud, put the battery insulation so that it's more efficient and cost effective. Because if you do, like I say, if we do foam insulation everywhere, it's going to be too expensive. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's worth it. Maybe you're somewhere up north, Canada, or you know, I don't know. Maybe it's worth it, but our area is not too bad, you know? Yeah. Well, and it makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And we don't get like a lot of snow. And now that I say that, it'll probably be the worst winter we've ever had, you know? But yeah, we don't really get a lot of snow. And our winters are more rainy than they are snowy or icy. But I can understand why this could still be really effective. Or how do you feel about like in the summer? Because we kind of have some brutal summers most of the time. Like, is it very effective for keeping home cool in the summer to have foam insulation? Or are you like, nah, it's not, it doesn't really make that much of a difference?
here.
No, it works. It works winter, summer. Yeah, exactly. Because you have to remember in the summertime, you have to cool down the temperature inside the house. Means if you don't have a better insulation system, then you have the energy lost through the walls.
Yeah.
Pretty much you're just creating the barrier between the exterior temperature and interior temperature, so that you don't have to run your equipment higher or longer to heat or cool the house. But there's some things I want to say. One area that a lot of builders do differently, and I'm gonna explain how I do it and why. Is the garage insulation. Garage, you have to remember the garage is an unconditioned space, right? You don't have heating cooling there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to make sure that a lot of builders they don't do it. We have to make sure that we do it. The garage walls are also insulated. I don't want to go open the garage door and it's so freaking cold, And
like, would you say this is specific to an attached garage rather than like a
detached garage? I mean, you can do detached garage too, like I said, so that when it's not completely cold, okay?
Yeah.
As I say again, it's not gonna cost you a lot of money. Even especially attached garage, you have to think about a garage. Above the garage, there might be a floor.
Sure.
And you say, okay, garage is unconditioned space. I don't have to insulate. But then, if you don't insulate the garage ceiling, if you have a floor above, so that would be cold forever. So especially those areas you have to keep in mind. Make sure that adding that additional few $100 may be worth it, because creating that envelope in the garage and also having that seal or insulation on the ceiling. Also, when you open the door in the garage in the wintertime, summertime, it's not really that bad. So we do it. And some of the things, like you have a cantilever joist, a cantilever overhang, or bay window, box window, things like that, we always do foam, because those areas that cold draft, especially wintertime, that it may just come through the gaps. And same thing in the summertime too. So those areas, the critical area, like a joist bands, overhangs, locations, we do foam.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's worth it. And another thing is, I'm sure you have heard it, is sound insulation.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I get that question all the time.
You do, right?
Specifically, like a lot of it is on busier streets, and usually people are referring to windows more than they think the walls necessarily, but the walls are really going to be better at muting sounds than I think than a window ever could, just because glass naturally vibrates at, I don't know, or maybe I'm making this up. So does glass in a window vibrate or make more noise than a wall would? Yeah.
See, also, before I forget, while we're talking about exterior envelope, so you have a very nice, better insulation. If in foam insulation, then your window is crap. That really doesn't do anything to you, because that window, make sure that you have a better product window, right? And especially window nowadays, you have at least a double pane. Nobody uses single pane anymore. Used to, all the house you see it, but there's a double pane and triple pane window construction. And double pane is very common, but I've seen several places people do triple pane. And I don't know, I think it's you. I think you and I talked about this before.
Yeah.
I have a client here, we wanted to do triple pane, and I was talking with a vendor, and you were telling me, Raz, especially in our area, it's not really worth it, because going from double to triple pane, your cost is almost double.
Wow.
Yeah, so there are different options, and again, you have to really think about is it worth it, right? So maybe it's worth it if it's really quite a cold weather or hot weather like Florida, Texas. But for our area, he was telling me, right, it's not really worth it. Go with save money and do double pane, All
right. Well, hey, that's good to know, because these are things that will be upsold to either investors or people building their own personal homes all the time, right? Yeah. Why wouldn't you? If you have what sounds like a better product and you don't have a good understanding of what truly insulating or adequately insulating your home is and soundproofing, you might feel like these are things that you need.
You just wasted money. Yeah, just wasted money. You didn't have to, and you're really not getting value out of it. One of the things I have done it, because my expertise is not insulation, but I talk to all the vendors and people all the time. One of the things I have done, I have seen people done it, is that to save money. So on the wall insulation, they use like 1 inch or 1.5 inches or 2 inch of foam.
Yeah.
Then they use bad insulations, okay? Regular fiberglass. That's a very bad combination. I've seen people done it all the time. And this is more like physics, why it doesn't work. The problem is you have to remember, so when you create a gap, so you have outside is your foam, and inside is you have those batt insulation, fiberglass, right?
Yeah.
And if it is completely sealed, sometimes what happens is your, sometimes, I don't know if you heard the terminology, your house is sweating. House can sweat. If your house is too tight, you can actually see
there's no airflow.
Yeah, like a moisture dot points in the doors and window glasses.
Oh, so like, could that be? That's not a reason necessarily when a window has like steam or water in between panes. You're talking
Yes, exactly. It is. You're trying to create the gap between outside and inside. That's what double pan. It's not double pan. In between you have a gas, argon gas. They filled, so create the void. So when there's a void, means outside temperature cold. It cannot travel through. You know what I'm saying? So you're coming here from here, and there's a barrier, and you cannot travel inside. You're creating that void.
Got it. So having a little bit of space. So you want some space.
Whatever the gap between, they create that gas so that and it becomes more efficient in energy loss. So when you have, I was going back about talking insulation combination of a foam and the bad insulation on the wall. So it can, when it sweats, what happens is you have to bad insulation, like the moisture can trap there behind it, because now outside envelope is so perfectly insulated, there is no breathing room. You cannot really breathe, right? Now we start creating those moisture, and I've seen it black. What do you call it? The molds. Yeah, even 5 years down the road, look at those houses. Now I said it. Look at those houses. Go back, and I have some of the vendors saying that I guarantee those houses after 5-10 years you have a mold problem because of the moisture trap. There is no breathing room.
Yes.
So
that's also, I recently I'd spoken with a foundation specialist, and this is probably exactly what you're explaining. We were in a basement, but he had said that because there was waterproofing on the outside of the home, adequate waterproofing, when we were putting up new walls, or for my client, when they were considering putting up new walls, they said, should we waterproof it on the inside? And he said, no, because then you basically make a Ziploc bag of moisture that will then create mold. And he goes, if you want a big old bag of mold that at some point it pops or leaks or something, and then all of that's in your walls, like, sure, then go for it. But if you have you need one real water vapor barrier, and it should be outside. So we're like, that is good to know. And he explained this whole breathing, you want some air to move around to prevent stagnant water living inside of your walls.
Sometimes making too much airtight is not good. I've seen it, and you might have a problem of a moisture trap. And the same applies to the basement. You have to remember when we pour a basement concrete slab, what we do, we have a level ground, and put about 4 inches gravel. Okay, on the gravel, then you put a vapor barrier plastic. Okay, then you pour a concrete, the wire. See, the purpose of that 4 inch, you have to remember the purpose of that 4 inch gravel, because you have to remember, think about this, and you have a 4 inch gravel, then you put a plastic barrier, vapor barrier, and pour a concrete on the top. I'm like, what is that gravel doing? You know what I'm saying? Because you are not pouring concrete or gravel, making your slab stronger, because gravel is below the vapor barrier, the plastic.
Yeah.
The plastic is sitting on the top of that 4 inch gravel. So what gravel is doing is that you are creating that gap of the moisture, because below on the ground there's a moisture, and because I know a little bit of science, but it says capillary action. That means that if you have a moisture, you have to remember sometimes you have a bowl of water, and you have a smaller tube, you put it in. Water may come through that tube a little bit high, up from the surface of from the water surface. It can come up to the tube. That's called a capillary action. So you have a smaller holes, and the moisture can actually come up. Ooh. Okay. So what you're doing with the 4 inch of gravel, you create that barrier so moisture cannot come up. Okay. Got it. So that's why if you don't have that gravel properly installed, sometimes, of course, people do only 2 inches because they want to save money, but then you don't really create enough depth of that barrier for the moisture to travel up into the ground or to the slab. Because you have to remember, if the plastic is broken or in holes, it's very likely, right? Because it's sitting on the gravel, and gravels are usually very, sharp edges. It may cut. So you have to make sure that the plastic is also thick enough. Sometimes people just put a plastic, but if it's too thin, it really doesn't work. Okay, so having certain thick plastic really helps, and having that 4 inch, it's by science, is that creates the enough depth of moisture to travel up into the slab. So you're creating that gap, and it's pretty much when you create that, means that the cold is not coming from the ground. So same applies to the outside. So I think sometimes you are saving money and trying to mix match. It's not good. Like I say, you're trying to mix match foam with bad insulation and exterior walls, and you have a problem because now there's wrong physics going on.
It just doesn't all coordinate together the way it's supposed to. Okay, so then it sounds like also insulation, it's not just all done at once. It's kind of more done a little bit throughout the process. Am I getting that? Well, or types of insulation. Like you just described the plastic barrier when you're pouring the concrete. So that's like one type. And then after your MEPs are done, so all of your inspections are done for your plumbing, electrical, heating, HVAC, like we talked about in prior weeks. Once those things are completed, then you can add in the other types of insulation we talked. So like spray foam. Like you're not going to spray foam until you are really sure all your inspections are done and you have no other outlets or things you want to put in, because it can be a little challenging. Not impossible. It doesn't prevent you from adding one in the future, but it's a lot less easy to do. But you're going to do that after your MEPs are done. Is there any other insulation that gets done after those spray foam or fiberglass batting or a blown-in insulation? Is there any other types of insulation that happen after those things are added in?
Yes, there are a few things we can do. There are a few things we can do. But like you said before, when you do that insulations, again, overdoing probably is not a good thing sometimes, right? So you have to make sure that there's a balance. So one of the things that I was talking about before sound insulation is you can actually do sound insulation. I was talking about inside the house, because especially if you have a media room or you have a gym, you can really have a loud noise, even the bathrooms. So there's just some methods or some techniques available, not that expensive in the market, where you can use the insulations, almost like batted wood. Like 3 inch, 4 inch, 4.5, those are very common. So you can apply on the walls and ceilings inside. So especially what I do in my house, what I've done is especially bathrooms and master bedrooms and the kitchen ceilings, the media room, gym area, those areas you can do it. That it's worth it. It helps. It's not gonna 100% completely helps, but you'll feel the difference between the house of having sound insulation inside and not having it. Okay.
Yeah, I've actually had a lot of people ask me about how to improve sound insulation in their home offices.
Yeah.
Because, you're on a Zoom call, you're making a lot of noise. or say your kids are playing in the room next to where you're making a Zoom call and they're making a lot of noise. And a lot of people are going to be working from home still for quite a while or want to in the future. Soundproofing rooms like a home office have also become something that has been requested.
Yeah. So that's what I would say. If you have home office, maybe you may want to consider doing it. So in home office, it depends where it is. You probably have to do on the floor and ceiling, right? That's how it is. And walls, interior wall. Exterior walls, you already have insulations.
Yeah.
And that will give you a little bit of sound insulation, because then there is no actually room to put additional insulation, sound insulations on the exterior walls. Also, another thing we can do is that there's a board, like you are 1 inch, 2 inch board, foam board you can install outside or inside the house. So what I have seen typically is that, let's say you have a 2x6, 2x4 construction, means the thickness of the wall is only 3.5 inches. So there's so much you could do in the gap, because your gap is only 3.5 inches. So you do R15, but if you want to do more insulation, you can actually put 1 inch or 2 inch of board, like foam board, insulation board outside. Okay, and then on the top of that, you can put a OSB board, wall seating. So there's a way to improve it, and I've seen it. People do it with 2x4 and 2x6, and even even with the 2x6, it depends where you are. If it's really cold weather, you could do combinations of the board, the foam board from outside. That's not the same as foam insulation. Foam insulation, you are spraying inside between these stuff. That's another problem. I don't like it. It's like you see all the wiring, everything now. Yeah. If you have to change it, it's a pain, because now you have to cut the foam. Yeah. Yeah. So that's why I really don't like so much doing a foam everywhere. But that's a big problem, is that all the wiring, everything is like stuck now permanently, unless you want to cut it out and reopen.
Well, yeah. And there's what I've seen, I've had a couple of clients that have purchased homes from people that installed foam insulation, thinking, oh, this is going to be great. And then they wanted to change where their dining room and their living room were. They wanted to switch it up. So now they needed some outlets installed for these, right? Yeah. And they were pretty shocked when the electrician's like, hey, it's going to be like double what you thought it was, because you have foam insulation, and this takes a lot more effort for me to try to do this. And then there's some wall repair. They're like, it's not like me fishing this through the wall like normal. It's a lot more complicated. So I was like, wow, I think this will become something that more people realize as more homes that have had foam insulation installed resell over time. It's a new enough product where there hasn't been like a ton of that, I think. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of new builders or new construction home developers utilize it yet, unless it's in a very high-end well, like in a location that really requires it, like very hot or very cold. Yeah. But or the price point dictates it, or somebody's willing to pay for it. But other than that, I don't think it's as widely used yet. But it's coming. I think there's going to be a lot of people in the future who are like, oh, to make repairs inside my walls is kind of a pain in the butt with foam insulation. And that goes for plumbing too. It's not just electrical. Like this is you better really like the home exactly the way it is.
Yeah, it is. Exactly. So there's a pros and cons, like I said, but there are different options available. So when you talk to, you're a contractor or builder, ask for all these options, because usually what happens is when contractor is signed, you have a fixed cost, and contractor is trying to stay within a budget. And they don't even present these options to the owners because they don't have time. They just want to finish it and go next project. Yeah. But ask them, maybe I can add a couple of $1,000. I can expand and make the house better insulated, and maybe there are a few things you can upgrade, and you may actually save money and better perform building, and you may not have to spend a lot of money to it. But like I say, if you don't ask, you don't get any answers, right? It's just ask. True. So
very, very true. All right. So is there anything we didn't tackle in terms of insulation that we need to?
I mean, that's what I think of now.
I think that was a lot.
That's a lot, yeah.
There's a lot. Awesome.
We spoke almost like 45 minutes.
I know. So if you're still with us in this journey, thank you. You are now an expert in insulation. All right. Well, thank you so much, Raj. This was super educational and helpful as usual. And I look forward to next week. So if anybody has any insulation comments or questions, please put them in the comments below, and we will see you guys next week.
Sounds good. Bye-bye. Take care.